I could not be more thrilled that the first annual Honeybee Festival at Stratford has the keynote speaker who agreed to come here and speak. It was probably, we were discussing last night, probably close to 15 years ago that I first met Dan. I was a fairly newish, probably in my third or fourth year of beekeeping, working for the taskmaster Sue Kobe. I was learning wonderful stuff. I was blessed to be working for somebody like Sue Kobe. Any further ado, an absolute hero of mine, an activist for sustainable beekeeping, smart beekeeping, Dan O'Hanlon.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate it. Emily, the only thing I want to say to you is, did you ever know that you're my hero? That is so incredible. Honestly, I'm so proud of you. And I know your dad is too. I love bees and I love beekeepers. And I really appreciate you folks being here to listen to what I have to say, because the bees are hurting. They're in trouble. And it's not their fault, it's our fault. You know, people are terrified. Any little thing that's flying around, they want to get something out, spray it, and kill it. They're just terrified of insects. I don't know why that is. And unfortunately, we've gotten to the point with the companies like Bayer and Monsanto and others that they have things that will kill anything. I mean, it'll keep on killing them long after you've sprayed. It'll go into the ground, and it'll go into the plant, and it's systemic. And they tested it on bees. I mean, everything they have to do, they got to spray the bees. And they do. And when the bees don't die, they say, oh, it's fine for bees. But it isn't fine for bees. What they are now finding out is this latest bunch of things they've put out there, systemic pesticides called neonicotinoids, an artificial tobacco product. You know how good tobacco is for us. It's just as bad for insects. It kills them. It kills their whole nerve system, just gets jangled and damaged by it. And sure, they put it in the bees, and the bees didn't die. But what they've now found out is that sublethal doses cause the bees to get early onset Alzheimer's. Isn't that amazing that bees can get Alzheimer's? But they do. And it accelerates them. And what happens is, you know, bees can fly out of the hive, know exactly where they are by the sun and the whole refraction of light, and fly as many as 6 miles away, get some nectar, and bring it back to the hive and never miss. Zoom, beeline, right back to the hive. What happens if they're exposed to the neonicotinoids while they're out there, which goes up into the leaves, the sap, the pollen, is that when they take this into themselves, it affects their nerves and their senses, and suddenly they can't remember how to get home. They're like me trying to find my car at the football stadium. You know, I'm like, So they just never make it back. And if enough of them go out somewhere where that's sprayed, enough of them don't come back that the colony just collapses. There just aren't enough bees to keep it going. It would be like a city. And if enough people just disappeared one day, the city would have to stop functioning. There wouldn't be enough people to, you know, pick up the trash and make sure that there was gas in the gas pumps and things, and eventually the whole thing would just collapse. That's what happens to our beehives, and it's terrible. They've got enough problems with the globalization of commerce bringing in pests like these varroa mites, which, you know, he told you about. It's like a tick the size of a saucer on your back. I mean, you know, that wouldn't be very pleasant for any of us, sucking your blood all day. Like, they're an 8-legged hypodermic needle. They're like it's not the mite that kills you. I mean, you don't want something sucking your blood, whether you're a bee or a human. The problem is, like malaria that gets inside of a mosquito, it's not the mosquito bite that kills you. It's the darn malaria that rode the mosquito over and got inside you when they took a little bit of your blood. The varroa are an 8-legged hypodermic needle that just penetrates you, and then all the viruses rush into the bees. And it's a real shame. But the biggest single thing that we can do for bees is to replace the forage that's disappeared. When I was growing up, there were fields and wildflowers and places everywhere. Now those things are subdivisions. Now they've done them all over, and everybody has to have a green lawn, and if they see so much as a dandelion, they have to go out and kill it. So the forage that used to be out there in farms all over are disappearing. And as those things disappear, the bees are disappearing because there isn't enough food for them to eat. They're starving. And they starve every winter because there just isn't enough. So I got together with some people. Actually, Sue Kobe and I were out in California this winter talking to the California beekeepers about this terrible problem. We were their speakers. And it really inspired me to develop what I call Plan B. And so this is a plan to develop an Appalachian forage corridor for pollinators. And I'm real excited about it, and I wanted to come here and tell you. We have a new agriculture commissioner. That's me in the black hat. Somebody's got to wear the black hat around here, and that day it was me. That's our new ag commissioner, Commissioner Helmick. And he called the beekeepers together, as he called the cattle producers and the milk producers and the lamb producers. And he said, my goal in 4 years is to double the output of everything. If you've got, 10,000 cattle, we want 20,000 cattle. If you've got this. So he got to the bees finally. And he said to me, how are we going to double the honey production? Easy, I said. Double the number of bees, double the number of beekeepers, and double the amount of plants you have out there. Because you could double the bees and double the beekeepers, but if there's nothing for them to eat, you just got twice as many dividing up what isn't enough for what's there now. Well, how are we going to do that? So I told him, we went back through history a little bit. We looked at we have records all the way back to 1974. We had 97,000 colonies in West Virginia, registered colonies in West Virginia in 1974. In 2012, we had 7,000 colonies. Now, the good news is that's up from 4,000 colonies the year before. The production, we were producing 1,358,000 pounds of honey. 2012, 336,000 pounds of honey. This is not good. This is an incredible decline. And as Dwight told you, finally in Washington, D.C., they woke up. Takes them about 20 years longer than it takes us to wake up. But they finally woke up to the fact that this is an unsustainable decline in honeybees. And folks, honeybees are the keystone insect in our whole ecosystem. They're what ties it all together. And I'll give you just a quick sentence or two about why that is. If you're a butterfly, and God bless butterflies, they'll go to a clover, and then a pear tree, and then a lind tree, and then over to an apple tree, whatever's out there. They just go from one nectar source to another, not honeybees. Honeybees are the only insect in the world that's what's called flower constant. If they go to an apple, they will not go to anything but another apple blossom until there aren't any more apple blossoms. And when they've taken all the nectar and pollen from the apples, then they'll move on to the clovers. And then they'll just do clovers. That's how come you have apples. Because if you're a butterfly and go from a pear to an apple with the pollen all over you, that doesn't do the apple tree any good at all to get pear pollen. You have got to have a honeybee that goes from the apple tree to the apple tree so that you get the apples pollinated. That's why honeybees are such an important pollinator species for everything, not just for the food we eat, but as Dwight said, for the food that animals eat. They have to have the pollination services of honeybees, which evolved when flowers evolved 20 million years ago. They co-evolved. And that's what caused plants to take over the earth, because honeybees were right there with them. So, we obviously have a long way to go to get back to where we were, but there's a woman named Dr. Tammy Horn over at Eastern Kentucky University who's one of my inspirations. Tammy's the new state apiarist in Kentucky, by the way, and really has moved up the ladder to where she can affect policy. And she talked to me and she said, Dan, we need to have Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee, we need to have a pollinator corridor where the bees can make a comeback because there's plenty for them to eat. So Tammy and I did some brainstorming, and she worked on the coal mines over in Kentucky. You know, they have to do reclamation. Once they come in and take the coal out, they have to return it. And what they do is they generally do the cheapest thing available. They throw down a little Kentucky 31 tall fescue and walk away. Well, Tammy persuaded some of them to try something else, to try doing something that's pollinator friendly. And she was successful on these old strip mine sites over there in talking to them about reforesting them with sourwood, with other things. And she gave them a list, and they did it. And she took poor people in poverty down there, trained them to be beekeepers, and got them permission to go to those mine sites and got some grants to put some beehives there, and it just worked perfectly. And for the first time, the coal companies, the first time in their history, got some good environmental publicity instead of the lousy publicity they always get because they're tearing the earth up. They liked that. So they all signed up for that, and Tammy got that going. So I said, Tammy, I'm going to try that over in West Virginia. We've got strip mines too, but I'm going to add to it plants along the highway. Those of you that are my age will remember Lady Bird Johnson and her highway beautification program. And if you drive through Texas, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. There's plants everywhere. Well, in West Virginia, as in Kentucky, as in Ohio, they don't do it that way. They mow along the highway every 2 weeks, spring, summer, and fall. They will not let a clover grow without shaving it off. And this is crazy. This costs them a small fortune to do that. So West Virginia had a 7.5% budget cut last year and the 7.5% budget cut this year, and that hit the highway departments too. So Commissioner Helmick arranged for me to do a presentation to the county road supervisors about how much money we might save if we stopped doing that mowing every 2 weeks and instead did a soil test and planted perennial forage plants for bees along there one time. And then just once in the fall, you mow it down so that, they'll come back up and you don't get stuff started that you don't want there. So we had 7 counties sign up, said, we want to try it. And the federal government came in and said, we think this is a good idea too. Just on the interstate in my county alone, there's 70 acres that the federal government pays to have mowed every 2 weeks, spring, summer, and fall. This is nuts, in my opinion. It's a big waste of money. So we're keeping track of how much money we will save by not doing that mowing. And it turns out that it's 10 times more in the savings than what it will cost them to put bee-friendly, pollinator-friendly plants in. The only thing I told them was, look, please don't put them in the median strip, because that spot on your windshield is my bee trying to get from the middle of the interstate back across the other side. Put them on the edge if you don't mind. And the other thing is, I cited some statistics to them that if you put the nice plants like that in the middle of the interstate, that's where the deer try to run across and get it, and then you have all these accidents. So they thought that was a pretty good idea. So we're going to keep it on the side of the roads, and we're going to keep it in that triangle when you get off the interstate. There's always that kind of a triangle there. That's an acre or 2 of ground that they mow. They're going to put these in there. They're going to put pollinator-friendly bushes and trees around the welcome centers. We can do it there too. I went to our mayor in my city, in the mayor, Huntington, West Virginia, and I went to the mayor of Clarksburg, and they have agreed that whenever they replace a tree inside the city anymore, it's going to be a pollinator tree. Not an oak tree. Nothing wrong with oak trees. I like oak trees. But you know what? They don't do much for the pollinators. You put a linden tree in there, and it's got, 200 pounds of nectar on it when it blooms, and it blooms for 4 weeks. So we're going to do this in those 2 towns. They've already started to do it. They've already planted hundreds of replacement trees in those towns. I didn't realize this, but apparently you can sponsor that in memory of Grandpa or, Susie or Emily. How about that? We'll do one in honor of Emily. So you can sponsor a little West Virginia wildflower project. You can adopt a highway like they do with the cleanup. Apparently you can do that, and maybe a local garden club can take care of it there, which I think is a really wonderful idea. So last month I was the keynote speaker at the Master Gardeners statewide convention, and many of them are going to go back and adopt a highway in their own community. So we think that these are real positive things. There's a list of some of the things that are, if you're looking for one, and I'll give a copy of this to Dave. You can put it on a website or something and you could look. Poplar trees, black locust, sumac, things that have flowers. I mean, this is just sensible. Black cherry, crabapple. There's some nice shrubs, of course, bramble, blackberry, raspberries, those kind of things. White sweet clover and yellow sweet clover. I was telling Sister Sally, if you could just plant one plant, make it a sweet clover. They're huge. I mean, these are big plants with long racemes of either yellow or white flowers. They bloom for about a month, and they have the highest percentage of sugar of any plant in the world, almost 40% sugar. So the bees just love them. I mean, they got a sweet tooth just like me. And and then you have wingstem and goldenrod and things of that nature that come, vitex bushes. So they put out a statewide contract, and some company bid, we'll provide all that for X dollars. And the coal companies are doing that now on their reclamation sites. And the highway department's doing it, both the county level and the state level and the federal level. And we think that's pretty exciting. Now, here's what we do. I'm going to tell you that I then went a step further than how Tammy did it. Because West Virginia has the highest percentage of people that volunteer for military service of any state in the nation per population. And so we have a lot of veterans that have come back from Iraq, Afghanistan, from war zones. And what we have found out is that if we try to put them back in an industrial setting, they don't do very well. There's dark corridors and corners, there's loud sounds and noises. This gives them problems readjusting back into society. But what we've discovered nationwide is that if you put them in an agricultural setting with nature, it brings some peace to their soul and let them knit their lives back together inside. You all have experienced that. You wouldn't be here today if you didn't know what I was talking about. And so we made this available to them. We got some grants, and we've got 40 veterans that signed up for the first class to learn beekeeping. We taught them, Dwight, basic beekeeping skills over the winter, got them hives. But I told the commissioner I need some money for solar-powered bear fencing because I want fat bees, not fat bears. That is not what I'm raising. I mean, I like a bear as well as the next person, you know, but I'm raising bees here, and I don't want to share that honey with those bears. So we get you can see, I'll see if I get a picture of the solar charger. See, down at the end there's a solar charger. That's Wade Stiltner's bee yard, our state bee inspector. Teeny little solar panel like that will keep that 12-volt battery trickled, and then you know, you've got you can see the wire, a ground wire and a hot wire, and they hit them both, they'll mainly hit it. And we have not yet lost a hive to a bear since we started this solar-powered bear fencing, and it just runs on nature. Doesn't, you know, once you set it up, it just kind of runs itself. Of course, we have a caution, no trespassing honeybees. I took a picture of Dave's beautiful sign out there, you know, about honeybees at work. I think that's a nicer way to say it. But one of the things I did about 5 years ago was West Virginia passed a law that we're the first state in the nation that you can't sue a beekeeper if you get stung. You'd be amazed how many people do. Oh, your bee stung, you know, my dog. Well, I'm sorry, but how do you know it was to have an ear tag in it, said Dan O'Hanlon on it? How do you know that was my bee? So these cases always get thrown out of court because of bees. There's bees everywhere. You don't know it's my bee. But the problem is it costs you thousands of dollars of lawyers' fees to try to defend the thing. So bees are state insect, and I went and lobbied it through. And in this age where you can't get a Republican and a Democrat to agree the sky is blue, it passed the Senate 34-0 and the House 94-2, and the governor signed it. Now, it didn't hurt that the governor's daddy's a beekeeper, and I had Daddy call him and talk to him, but we ran that through, and yeah, thank you. So we're trying to help the beekeepers that dig into their pocket because, you know, we're seeing bees die at a rate of 35–50% a year, and what happens? Beekeepers got to dig into their pockets and get that, you know, replenish their hives. And if they don't, then I'm telling you, this ecosystem's going to start falling apart. And I have farmers call me and beg me to bring beehives out to their farm. I had a fella out there who said, I got pear trees. He said, I don't have 10 pears on my trees. I brought a hive out there. He had limbs cracking from the weight of all the pears that year, you know, weighing the, wearing down the tree. We don't have enough honeybees out there to continue to hold our ecosystem together. And it's beekeepers who are like those medieval monks that sat there and, you know, copied those manuscripts one after another. It's the beekeepers that are keeping everything going. They're the real heroes of our ecosystem. And those of you in this room that are beekeepers, I have a great deal of admiration for you because of what you do. You know, you keep splitting your hives and building them up and buying more and making nukes and trying to be sustainable, like Dwight said. We're not sustainable right now. And the White House finally acknowledged if we keep losing bees at this percentage, they're going extinct in our lifetime. And you can't have that. You can't have the life you have now without honeybees. It is not possible. So anyway, there we go. So before we get to the questions, I want to tell you something I'm really proud of, and this is my little thing that I did Tammy one better. Medina, Ohio, Bee Culture Magazine just got published this week, and they published my article on here about the Veterans and Warriors Project. I started telling you about it, now I'm going to finish telling you about it. We put these veterans on there, and and they can't get enough of beekeeping. They're fearless. They're like your kids, you know, when they went out there around the hive. They're just fearless people. I mean, they face death. So bees nothing to them. I mean, like it might be to you or me if we'd never seen one. And they just love their bees. They just do. I'm going to see if I can't read you a quote from one of these veterans in here of what he said when they asked him about this. Let's see. Here we go. There is tremendous therapeutic value with farming and agriculture, James McCormick said. Watching life blossom, seeing Mother Nature's work and getting hands in the soil are great for the veterans. Helps them get out of their homes, and agriculture-based therapy is really helping to heal these people. They did a story in our local paper about it, and they interviewed Eric Grandin of Clay County, West Virginia, very coal-oriented place in the middle of the state. He sees beekeeping as a field that will complement his existing farming efforts and help him through some of the issues that he's experienced in being a veteran. He said there's nothing like having a sense of responsibility and accountability. What you reap is what you will sow, Grandin told the Daily Mail. Farming has changed my life. My wife sees me like she used to see me. I'm excited again. I've regained my life. I found my purpose, and that is what truly matters to me. So, I'm telling you, thank you, sir. If we're helping these people who have risked their lives so that we can be free and talk and have fellowship here today, then, you know, God bless them and God bless us for what we've done, because I think it's very, very important to get these people healed and get them back in. And I think there's nothing like nature to heal us all. Every one of you has experienced that peace that comes, that peace that passeth understanding. And it comes, I get out in my hive sometimes and Dave, I just zone out. I just go off. Emily, you know what I'm talking about. You get out in your bees. You know what I mean. I can see that smile. And there's just something fascinating about them. Maybe I just love to watch them. They're the only thing work harder than me as far as I can tell. They just never stop from morning till night. They're going in and out like that until their poor little wings just wear out and they just can't do it anymore. So before my wings wear out here, I want to know if there's any questions from you folks. You've all come out here today. Yes, sir.
Well, it's quite admirable, all the initiatives you have going, both the agricultural society. What I want to compliment you on, though, is this idea about the Appalachia trail system of flowers. We have a land trust organization that's kind of doing a similar thing in small plots.
Great.
And I have personally planted 30 acres of prairie wildflowers. Just recently I got a notice from our township trustee that I need to get rid of all my weeds.
Oh my gosh. But you can spray whatever you want on them, right? They don't care.
Right.
They don't care how poisonous it is. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So we have a lot of educational opportunities here in front of us.
Yeah, we certainly do. Yes, ma'am.
The insecticide that you described,
Neonicotinoids.
is that applied at planting? Does it coat the seed?
Nope. Oh, actually, they do neonicotinoids on corn, on the seeds. But what they do is they're real little golden pellets called gaucho, and there's 2 or 3 names for it. And you just throw them down on your garden, and the roots of the plant take this stuff up into them, and it goes through every part of the plant. The leaves, if the bugs chew on them, they die. The sap, the pollen, the nectar, everything is poisoned with this.
So that's in an urban application. In the rural application, in the
They spray it.
farmer,
Massive spraying, yeah. They have to notify the beekeepers, get your hives, shut them up, because we're going to spray this stuff. But it doesn't matter. They open the hives back up, it's still in the plants, and it's killing them in sublethal doses. It'd be like giving you half the dose that would kill you of arsenic every day. Well, it won't kill you, it's only half the dose. But you don't want to take it day after day after day. And this is what we're putting on our bees. Yes, ma'am?
So when you showed those statistics back from 1974, and you see this incredible reduction in colonies, is that related to people not starting, or is that colonies dying out?
Both. Both things. I think it's really hard to be a beekeeper Dwight was telling you that, when he was first keeping bees and when I was first keeping bees, there was nothing to it. You just basically went out there on 4th of July and took the honey off, and that's what beekeeping was. There was no work to it. There was no big pests. There was nothing that was killing them. Now you almost have to have a PhD in biology to be a beekeeper. There is so much hitting those bees. And the first time you get around one, the next one comes along and hits them. It just seems like we've been hit again and again and again. And when you start losing 50% of your hives year after year after year, I mean, you can't do that very long. So it discourages people. I've bought out, so many older beekeepers call me and say, Dan, I just can't do it anymore. I can't dig into my pockets another year and replace all my hives. Will you just come buy my operation out? And I do. And I try to move them somewhere that they're not spraying poison night and day. But it's tough. And so you're getting fewer beekeepers going into beekeeping. Then when I see an Emily, I go, God bless you, honey, because if we don't start convincing younger people, well, like Dave is doing here with his apprenticeship program and like Dwight is doing, if we don't, in all agriculture, not just bees, but especially bees, because it's difficult. It's not a formula. You have to really study hard and work hard.
So those hives are successful hives?
Yeah.
That went the season. Is that what that was?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so we have something similar to Stratford, not as big, not as beautiful, but we have a farm museum in my hometown. And I advise them, and we put an observation hive, one where the kids can look in, and we bring 6,000 school kids through, and every one of those kids, we try to educate them about what a bee does, and do you like apples, and do you like strawberries, and that, and at the end of the day, they say, well, what can we do? We hand every single one of them a packet of flowers. Go home and plant these flowers, because I read a book about nature deficiency disorder, which our kids today are suffering from. And yes, I understand we're protecting them from the dangers and all that. I mean, I used to run wild around forest preserves and creeks and everything else, and I understand we're terrified to let our kids do that. But they're not getting that experience. We had a group of school kids come to my farm to get pictures in the fall of leaves for show and tell, and I saved the apple tree till last. Had these beautiful red apples on them, and they were all, each going to pick an apple and eat them. And this little girl said, Mommy, look, Judge O'Hanlon taped apples up in a tree. I'm not making that up. Apples come from the Krogers, don't you know that? You can't fool me, Judge O'Hanlon. They don't understand, so we have got to expose them to this. So we give them a packet of flowers that's all good for bees. Go home and plant this, we say, and watch it. Some of those flowers are going to come up, and one day that child is going to watch, and there's going to be a butterfly or a bumblebee or a moth or a bee on it, and they're going to say, wow, I helped save the bees. They'll hook for life. We give away 6,000 packets of seeds a year. So if you got to catch them one at a time, don't you? You got to do what you can. You got to think globally, but you got to act locally, don't you? And try to solve this problem. And if you only got 1 out of 100 that for the rest of their life wanted to support the Stratford Reserve here because they understand this is our only hope. This is it. So keep educating the children, because they're the ones who are going to have to solve this mess we've handed to them. Yes, sir.
What can we do for our county and our state to get it swung over like West Virginia is doing? Stop this mill and start planting. I see people go out, do the bee inspection on county. They'll just broadcast on top of sod. I said, don't do that. You got to get the soil and seed contact.
Sure.
Take the extra minute.
Yeah.
But what can we do? What machinery do we have that we can work?
I think your agriculture commissioner will be key to it, to get you in with your highway commissioner, so they both have, you got to align those interests. And they need to understand at the highway how much money they're wasting on that and how much they could be saving. Yes, sir.
Well, the state just got back one mow, and my nephew told me a year and hundreds of thousands. State just going from like 4 to 3 or 3 to 2.
Exactly. We were going to do one county, 6 other counties called and begged us, can we be part of this? We've got to find some way to save money. Yes, sir.
With regards to the highway program, can you share some numbers about what does it cost to mow and how much we're able to save?
We're in the first year. I wish I had that. We're just doing it now. And they estimate the savings is going to be 90%. But I don't want to say that until they have the actual numbers. And I'm glad 7 counties wanted to do it, because if I just did one, they'd say, well, that's just Cabell County. That won't be like that for us. We've got counties all over our state that are participating in the pilot this year. Not only that, I got beekeepers that took an average of how much honey they had in their site that are within flying distance of these roads, and this year we're hoping that we can show the extra honey, because this is of course what the ag commissioner wants, double the honey. So if we can prove that we can increase the honey production, and therefore that's good for the economy because we all sell this honey, and lower the costs of government, I mean, what's not to like about that? So since I published an article about that, about Plan B in a national magazine, I'm working now with 4 states. I'm working with Ohio, working with Indiana, working with Colorado, working with Pennsylvania. They're all very interested in this. And as I say, the federal government's monitoring these savings too. I mean, they're not dumb. They may act dumb, but they're really not dumb. And they're running out of money too. They understand that too. So any place they can save dollars, they want to do that. And just remember, I'll get to you in just one second. One more thing is important. I say bees, bees, bees because I love my bees. This helps every pollinator. There's every kind of pollinators dying off. The monarch butterflies, they're in terrible trouble. I've got all kind of milkweed growing on my, because I'm terrified that we'll lose the monarch butterflies. This helps every pollinator. The bees are just the canary in the coal mine. They're just what we can see because they're so visible because we keep records. Nobody keeps records of how many moths there are or how many bumblebees. Nobody's tracking like there are the honeybees, because 1 out of every 3 bites of food you eat was pollinated by a honeybee. So we understand how important they are. $42 billion worth of pollination services by honeybees in America every year. We don't know how much bumblebees do. We don't know how much, viceroy butterflies do. We just know they're all declining from the same problems. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering, because you mentioned the rate of decline since genetically modified crops have also been introduced because of
Same problem.
4D and everything.
Same
else
problem.
being sprayed.
Roundup, yeah, awful. And the problem with Roundup isn't necessarily that it gets into the bees. The problem with Roundup is something that it's an herbicide. It just kills everything. And what the farmers want is, they think that's better. So they get up some corn or soybeans that you can spray this herbicide on. Doesn't affect the corn, doesn't affect the soybeans. Just kills everything else. Think of how many flowers there used to be in that field for the pollinators. That's what's hurting the bees and the pollinators, is that if you go out to California from December through March, when the almonds are being pollinated, 800,000 acres of almond trees. 80% of the almonds grown in the world are grown in California. And UC Davis did a study about 20 years ago that said if you put 2 beehives per acre, you will make $3,000 more worth of almonds. Well, how much does it cost you? $300 to rent 2 hives for a season. That's a 10-time return on your money. So they call me every winter, please bring your bees out here. Half the bees in America get put on trucks and taken to California for 3-4 months and then hauled back. So the problem people tell me about when they get out there is that they have sprayed everything because they want the bees only to go to the almond trees. They don't want any other flower to attract that bee over there. They want what they paid for, the bees going to the almond trees. So this is not a good thing. It is bare ground for 800,000 acres with nothing but almond trees on it. Now that's sick in my mind, but you talk about the ultimate monoculture. That can't be right. So that's how it hurts the pollinators with this Roundup Ready stuff, GMO crops. So, and of course we have no idea what it's doing, the other side that you're talking about. The studies haven't been done long enough now, but they'll find out. They'll wish they hadn't.
Is preen in that group? People use that preen.
Is it preen in that group? I don't know. I'm afraid I don't know all the brand names. And of course, the minute they start saying don't use gaucho anymore, gaucho goes away and they call it preen. They'll just change the name.
It's
hoping that
emergent.
It could be. I don't know. I don't know enough about them. I'm not a plant pathologist. Where's Noble? Yes, ma'am. He's the plant pathologist.
When you got the governor's buy-in in West Virginia, how much of what's the percentage of beekeepers that are commercial? So
Small. West Virginia has more small farms than any state in the nation. Because of our mountainous terrain, we're not set up to have big farms. We just aren't. And so we're fortunate in that way that they don't have the huge farms with all the chemicals and stuff. But You know, I couldn't tell you the percentage. There are a few big pollinators up in the mountains because they have peach orchard, apple orchard, cherries orchards up there where they bring in a bunch of them, but that's up in the northern mountain section. I don't live up there. I live on the Ohio River in the west. But I'll tell you something else about all these, half the bees in America, 1.5 million hives of bees gets transported to California, and they all go to one place. Now you think about it. If you took half the kids in America and put them in a stadium together for 4 months, put them in the same place for 4 months, one kid got the measles, what's going to happen in 4 months? Every kid's going to have the measles. So if one of those hives has a sickness, by the time they come back, you're bringing the sickness with you. You're putting that sickness on a truck and bringing it back. Years before it would ever got back to Ohio. They're giving it a ride. So you know what's going to happen. Anything that's there, it's going to be in everybody by the end of that 4 months. They're all going to pass it around one to the other and then bring it back with them. That's the crazy part. That's the crazy part.
Why isn't it doing their own bees?
There's so much money. Oh, there isn't enough forage in California to support 1.5 million bees year round. So they got to take it somewhere else or they'll starve to death. So that's the problem. It's this commercialization of beekeeping like as a commodity, like putting all those cattle in a feedlot instead of letting them be out in a field eating grass. You put them all together in this feedlot and feed them corn, you know, until they're fat enough, and then you harvest them. They're starting to keep bees like that, and I don't like that. That's why I won't put chemicals in my hive. And I lost a lot of bees for not putting chemicals in my hive, but I eat that, my family eats that, my friends eat that. I'm not going to do that. And then find out years later, oh, it does cause cancer. You know, I'm not going to be responsible for that. So I lost a lot of bees, but Dwight and me and several others are working real hard on getting bees that have the hygienic ability to survive these things. I just hope the next one doesn't come along and knock them all out. Because we're getting back up to where I've got about 85% of my bees are living every year. So, you know, that's a huge improvement for me. There were years when I lost every hive I had and had to start over again. So we're working together, these 4 states, trying to swap the most survivor genetics with the other most survivor and get them together and accelerate that process. We've got a couple of university professors, Dr. Greg Hunt from Purdue, David Tarpey from North Carolina, Dr. Larry Connor. They're advising us on how to do this right, how to do it the natural, sustainable way. Because they don't want to see bees go down this chemical treadmill that all the rest of agriculture seems to have gone down. It's the only food that doesn't spoil in the whole world is honey. It doesn't spoil. They found honey in a clay jar sealed with beeswax, 3,500 years old, in an Egyptian pyramid, broke it open and had it for lunch. It's the only food that doesn't spoil, and I won't poison it. I will not poison it and then let you feed it to your kids. It isn't right. It isn't right. And if we're not careful, they've got places that are so polluted in China that when they produce cherries, they got to go out with Q-tips and do it themselves because the bees can't survive. It's too polluted there. And if you want cherries, someday you'll be out there with a little Q-tip too, unless we can save the bees. So it's very important. So help a bee, help a beekeeper, and God bless every one of you. Thank you.